Watagwan.
Watagwan.
Datagwan.
Watagwan.
Watagwan. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 10 p.m. on CVM TV.
Get informed, get involved. Tune in to the National Budget opening presentation on Tuesday, March 10 as the Honorable Favour Williams, Minister of Finance and the Public Service, outlines the central government budget for fiscal year 2026-27. The national budget is everybody's business. Visit mof.gov.jm for more info. Watch live on CVM at 3 p.m.
Thank you for joining us for CVM News at noon. It's Monday, March 10, 2026. I'm Marshall Hazley. A 6-month-old baby is dead and a family in mourning after a fire destroyed a house in Guinep Tree, Montpelier, St. James early Tuesday morning. Our correspondent Kingsley Thompson was on location.
Well, what we can tell you at this time is that fire investigators are now combing through the rubble of a 4-apartment house after a devastating early morning blaze claimed the life of a 6-month-old baby girl. Authorities are now working to determine what sparked the fire that left the building in ruins and the community in mourning. Little Nemera Graham, affectionately called Journey, was at home with her father and other siblings when tragedy struck shortly after 1 this morning in the quiet hilltop community of Guinep Tree, Montpelier, St. James.
When he said, I don't know what caused the fire, he just asleep and I just heat wake him up. Everybody in the house when asleep.
I understand somebody tried to save the baby but got burned. Who is that?
That's my baby brother. We left him up at hospital because he get little burn on his body.
So how are you guys feeling in the community now?
Yeah, beer no more. My father come like a butter in my butter. If fire big, me face everybody where it did. One piece of fire we are pop. Also we are here fire blaze up. When time me try to help, me never can do nothing. Less than 10 minutes the house catch a fire. Everybody shocked. Because I pass this fire we ever see.
Head of the St. Anne Police, Superintendent Carlos Russell, is urging residents to talk out their disputes and avoid physical conflicts. He says the majority of murders in St. Anne in 2025 stemmed from unresolved altercations. His comments come following the killing of 16-year-old Devani Shero by a 17-year-old schoolmate last week.
It's a very tragic situation, one that would have left 2 families in mourning. Conflict is one of the things that has been affecting us as a parish in St. Anne, and 70% of our murders last year was as a result of serious conflicts. And we have seen where persons are unable to resolve their conflicts without using violence. So we are encouraging persons to try and resolve their conflicts without the use of violence. So we're just asking them to talk it out rather than fight it out.
In the meantime, the 17-year-old boy who has been charged with murder is scheduled to appear before the family court next Wednesday, March 18. Superintendent Russell says he appeared in court last Friday after he was charged on Thursday in the presence of a parent.
Of last week, a 17-year-old who attended Ocho Rios High School was charged for the murder of Devon Shearer, 16-year-old student. He was brought before the court on Friday, that is the family court, where he was remanded to appear again on the 18th of March. So he is now at a juvenile detention center, and that is where we are at this moment.
Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says in the event that all Cubans withdraw their services following the discontinuation of the long-running medical program, plans are being put in place to ensure that healthcare delivery across the island remains uninterrupted.
In the short term, the ministry will be working with the regional health authorities to activate what we call a contingency measure to maintain critical services. So that's our short-term surge plan, which includes revision of duty rosters, increased use of overtime and extended work hours. The other short-term measure that is being discussed for implementation is the engagement of some outsourcing of some services through the private sector, and Cabinet has given its go-ahead for that. So I want to mention in particular radiotherapy services and cataract or surgeries, specifically linked to the Cuba eye care program at St. Joseph's.
In the meantime, the health minister further notes that eye care operations will continue at St. Joseph's Hospital and Medical Center. He says patients who previously received surgery are encouraged to attend their scheduled follow-ups and ensure proper recovery and is continued with care.
The Jamaica Cuba Eye Care program will continue. That's the intention. Its operations will continue by the Cuban team up to the 20th of March. There's an agreement on that. And for the remainder of the program's operations, services will be limited to surgery and post-operative care. Now, what this means is that for surgical procedures for patients who are already scheduled and follow-up care for patients who have already undergone eye surgery and retina-related post-operative treatment and monitoring. So those who are prepped for surgery, and I think the number I got was about 130 something, 140. Those procedures will take place. So those who have those appointments, not to worry, that will take place. In addition to that, the post-surgery care will continue under the program using the same staff, Cuban healthcare workers, up until that time.
In the meantime, spokesman on health, Dr. Alfred Dawes, says the government appears to have acted without sufficient planning before announcing the end of the Cuban medical program. He argues that making the announcement publicly placed the Cuban government in a difficult position and suggests Kingston did not anticipate Havana's response. Dr. Dawes is also critical of the communication from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, saying the government has not fully been transparent about the circumstances surrounding the program's termination.
Well, I think what they expected was that there would have been enough time from the announcement to the end of the contract for them to put things in place. What I didn't expect was that after they had publicly announced that they were inducing the collaborators to stay, to leave the program, defect from the program and stay in Jamaica, that the Cuban government would react by pulling everyone. No, and I think that's what basically happened. It was a poorly thought out plan to publicly state that you are offering them contracts because you put the Cuban government in a precarious position. The communication coming out of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you just want to say stop. Just stop right now. Don't take us for idiots. Let us see if we can divert attention towards the Ministry of Health and see what can be done.
Dr. Dawes further added that if concerns raised by international bodies about labor conditions in Cuba's medical missions influence the government's decision, then the government should clearly state why and acknowledged that Cuba may see the issue differently.
And this is what the government should be saying, that we made the decision because of this, rather than to say that we suddenly discovered that this is the issue. Speaking with the Cubans themselves who are here and who have left, they may have a different version of events. And the fact that some of them go on these missions repeatedly to different countries, that in itself may show a different perspective.
Time now for a break or a live interview when we come back.
Welcome to Deposit Insurance in a Minute. JDIC provides deposit insurance to each depositor based on their ownership category, up to 1.2 million at each bank and building society.
So what that mean now? What it means is deposits in each bank are insured separately, up to $1.2 million, and deposits in different ownership categories,
such as individual accounts, business accounts, joint accounts, and trust and nominee accounts, are also insured separately in each bank.
So wait, if me open my account in a two different bank, the two of them cover 1.2 million each?
That is it. Even if you plan for open two different categories of accounts,
like one individual and one business account in the same bank,
JDIC insures them separately under the deposit insurance scheme.
That's how deposit insurance works.
JDIC, protecting deposits for you and me.
Here, where the Caribbean greets the morning, elegance isn't just seen, it's sensed. Set on Jamaica's north coast, the Montego Bay Convention Center rises with intention. A space designed to inspire, connect, and lead. Polished, purpose-built, poised for what's next. Step into a venue where scale meets serenity, where openness isn't just a design, it's a philosophy. This is more than a venue. This is where vision checks in.
Finance Minister Favour Williams opens the budget this afternoon. The budget debate opens this afternoon, and the Finance Minister has already announced new taxes to help fund the budget. And the Planning Institute of Jamaica has estimated total damages to the Jamaican economy from Hurricane Melissa at nearly $2 trillion. Joining us to discuss this, we have economist Janelle McEwen. Mr. McEwen, thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Firstly, what will be the main job of the Finance Minister when she opens the budget debate this afternoon?
So the most important thing for the Finance Minister is to lay out the blueprint for NARA, the National Resilience Reconstruction Authority. That is the most important thing, because we cannot rebuild without an authority that is geared towards rebuilding in a resilient manner. So that should be the first thing. We should have a blueprint, because we would have seen where countries would have initiated similar authorities or similar agencies, and it has sped up their reconstruction efforts. Like, for example, in New Zealand, you would have seen where that worked immaculately, and also work in a way in which investors, foreign direct investors, had confidence in their economy after an earthquake. So I think that is the most important part, to lay out how will we rebuild and when will NARA kickstart and get going.
So, Mr. McEwen, there's been a lot of debate about the sugary drink tax in particular. What kind of additional clarity does the business sector and the country at large need from her in relation to that tax?
So that tax has drawn a lot of controversy, as we would have seen in Parliament recently, about how disproportionate it is and who does this really target. Because we would have seen where government officials we're making the statement regarding it is something that will be one of a health benefit, but it is mainly a tax that will try to get revenue, because we understand the consumption of a certain class of people, particularly working class families. They will not change their consumption habits with a price increase as meager as that one. So it gears toward generating revenue, because the government expect that the consumption will not decrease, hence the reason why they have a revenue target like that one. So it is important for other sugary drinks that we would have imported. The government must highlight the reason behind taxing, for example, our sugary products, local sugary products at that rate, while keeping imported sugary products at a lower rate.
And are there any other taxes that you think the government needs to explain in more detail?
Most definitely. There's been a lot of talk about the digital tax. We would have known that there's no clear implementation plan as it relates to that. And that is really important, because there are a lot of questions as to how the government will effectively charge these taxes and how will they go ahead and implement. So that is also important, because if it is that they expect to collect approximately 300 billion in revenue from those sources, it is important to clearly outline how will the government effectively collect these tax. And what is important is that at the standing or the fiscal committee, the government, Favor Williams would have been asked, and she stated that currently they don't have a clear plan. So hopefully now, today or later on today, we will hear something more about that.
No, the tourism sector isn't happy about the additional tax on that sector. The civil servants aren't happy with the changes to the motor vehicle duty concession. The business sector isn't happy with the sugary drink tax. Do you expect to hear any pullbacks or modifications to any of these taxes?
Yes, I mean, nobody likes paying more, and in this case, somebody will have to absorb a portion. Even with the sugary tax, we assume that the producer, the business owner, will pass on some of the tax to consumer, and they will pay a fair share of it. So nobody really wants to pay these taxes, but we all have a part to play. And one of the next important points I also want to mention is that of public sector wages, and how will the government really tie in public sector wages to economic gains, and then really construct a public sector wage package which really does not just increase arbitrarily, but rather increase as the economy grows. So it has to be tied to economic gains, and that is something that needs to be explained also. But I expect that, there will be murmurs from both the consumer and producers, but eventually we all have a part to play in this.
So, Mr. McKeown, the Prime Minister is the Minister of Economic Growth, but growth is a big problem for the economy. How much do you think is needed to be said about our economic growth?
It is important, because the government would have boasted or would have been rosy about having an economy to grow at approximately 9 to 12%, and given that inflation rate is at a meager 3.9%, there must be something that needs to be revisited from also the central bank as it relates to how will it that a country like Jamaica, with an inflation rate at 3.9, grow at 9 to 12% at current standard. We're expecting price to raise by at least a 10% increase in inflation. And if that's not the case, how is it that we're going to grow? If it is that we fall back on, for example, if consumption falls, how is it that we're going to grow? Because as we know, with economic growth, we have a national income identity that is used globally. And it goes like Y is equal to C plus I plus G minus net export. And if consumption falls, what we're expecting is a lower economic growth. And with that's GDP rather. So with the economic growth, we are going to deal with nominal and real GDP. And if it is that our real GDP falls, and that is consumption decreasing, how will we really benefit from this when we don't have a clear plan of how we're going to collect taxes from digital services? And if it is that the government is expecting consumers to really revert from sugary drinks and start to drink more water, how is it that we're going to expect an economy to grow by those numbers? So the government must clearly explain how is it that this is going to be possible and what do they expect the inflation rate to be.
Okay. So the independent fiscal commissioner has also said the analysis of the budget has been done without any detailed information about the National Reconstruction Resilience Authority that is supposed to help rebuild after Hurricane Melissa. How serious is that?
It is very serious because it should be the forefront. It should be at the forefront, and NARA should lay out the blueprint for recovery. And also, we would have collected several amount of aid and loans upwards about $6.5 billion US, and we need